The record will show that parties and counsel, as well as the jury, have returned to open court after the noon recess. The state may call its next witness.
The state calls Todd Bergen.
You're headed to that red chair, Mr. Bergen.
Thanks very much.
Watch the step. Before you sit down, please pause and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and be seated. I want to remind you of a few rules that we have in the courtroom. Many times when we're in regular conversation, we will interrupt the person with whom we're conversing. When we're in the courtroom, because we have a court reporter taking down every word that's spoken, it's essential that we have only one voice speaking at a time. So please let the attorneys finish their questions before you begin your answer, and I'm going to ask them to give you the same courtesy to let you finish speaking before they ask the next question.
Thank you.
All right. And would you please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names?
My name is Todd Bergen, Toddbergen.
Thank you. You may examine the witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh,
And if you could keep that microphone
Sure.
pretty close so we
Thank
can
you.
hear you. Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Bergen, where do you live?
I live at 3190 Old Orchard Road in Cedar Rapids.
Okay. And how long have you lived in Cedar Rapids?
Except for college, I lived there my entire life.
And what is it that you do for a living?
Currently the Vice President of Commercial Real Estate for Skogman Companies.
And how long have you been, I guess, in real estate?
About a year.
Okay. Prior to that, did you work in a different field?
I did. I was a Vice President at Transamerica Insurance Company, and I retired in January of 2019.
Okay. So now in retirement, you've started another job?
I got tired of being retired. Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bergen, I'd like to ask you some questions from when you were younger. Is that all right?
Please.
Okay. Where did you go to high school?
Kennedy High School.
And is that located in Cedar Rapids?
Yes, sir.
What year did you graduate?
1981.
And while you were at Kennedy High School, were you involved in any activities, sports, or clubs?
I was involved in theater and music.
Were you involved in theater and music throughout high school, or what grades did you do those activities?
Yes, all through high school.
And Mr. Bergen, did you know Michelle Martinko?
I did.
How did you know Michelle?
I knew her through high school choir.
Were you in the same grade as Michelle?
No.
Where was she older than you, younger than you, or?
Pardon me. She was younger. I'm sorry. She was older than I was.
Okay. How many grades older?
I believe she was a senior when I was a junior.
Would you say that you were friends with Michelle Martinko?
In passing, just mainly through choir.
Through the activities that you did?
Correct.
Okay. Did you talk with her at school?
If we saw each other in the hallway, we'd say hello, but nothing in detail.
Okay. Could you describe Michelle?
She was beautiful. She was very outgoing, talked to everyone, very well liked as far as I could tell. That would be about it.
Okay. So even as an underclassman or someone younger than her, she spoke with you?
She was very polite that way. She was very kind with her time.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bergen, I'd like to ask you specifically about December 19th of 1979. Do you recall that day?
I do.
The evening of December 19th, 1979, where were you at?
We had a choir banquet at the Sheraton Hotel on the south side of Cedar Rapids.
And was that for the entire choir?
I believe it was for the entire concert choir, the senior choir, the most senior choir.
Okay. Do you recall how many people were there?
Maybe 80 to 100, I suppose, maybe.
And what time did it start, generally?
Between 6 and 7 o'clock, I would expect.
So it was kind of a dinner banquet, would you describe it as?
That's correct. Right, correct.
Okay. Would this have been a function that Michelle Martinko would have attended?
Yes.
And did you see Michelle Martinko at the banquet?
I don't recall seeing her there, no.
Okay. Do you recall seeing her later in the night?
Yes.
Okay. How long, generally, did that banquet last?
I think it probably lasted an hour and a half, maybe, 2 hours at the most.
Did you have plans for after the banquet ended?
Yes, I was going to a movie with friends,
Who were you going to go to a movie with?
with Tracy Price, Marty Miller, and Stuart Gibson.
Was the plan to go immediately to the movie after the banquet?
I think the plan was to find out what time the movie started from the Sheraton, and then when we found out when it started, we went to the mall because the movie started after 9 o'clock.
Okay. So you had some time to kill before the movie started, so you decided to go to the mall.
Correct, right.
Which mall was it that you went to?
It was Westdale Mall.
Do you recall what time you got to the mall?
I don't exactly recall, but it was, it had to be before 9. I assume the mall was closing at 9. I believe the movie was 9:15, so probably 8:30, I suppose.
Was there any other reason for going to the mall other than to just kill some time as a high school teenager?
No, it was proximity. It's close to the theater. Yeah.
Now, while you were at Westdale Mall, did you see Michelle Martinko?
We did.
Okay. Do you recall how long it was after you arrived at Westdale Mall that you saw Michelle?
Not exactly, but we entered from the south end of the mall by Yonkers, and we're just walking around, so it must not have been that long, maybe 5 minutes.
Okay. Do you recall where it was that you saw Michelle in the mall?
I do. It was at the stairs at the middle of the mall. There was a set of stairs that went to the second level. It was at that stairwell.
Your Honor may approach the witness.
You may.
Now, Mr. Bergen, I'm going to have you step down off the witness stand. I'll give you a second to get familiarized with what's in front of you. Okay. Mr. Bergen, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1A. Could you please tell us what you're looking at?
This is an overhead of Westdale Mall.
Okay. Is that how Westdale Mall would have looked in 1979?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in looking at that exhibit, can you show us where it was that you encountered Michelle Martinko?
We encountered her, it would have been in this area, in these center stairwells.
Okay. And you are describing kind of a middle portion of the mall where the main walkways intersect?
That's correct, but there's a main area here, where the stairs, I believe, were, and it would have been in this area.
Okay. What are some of the stores that was located near?
Tobacco Bowl, Endicott Shoes, Rings and Things.
Okay. So those stores are listed on the map, and that's where you recall seeing Michelle Martinko? Okay. Thank you, sir. You can retake the stand. Now, when you saw Michelle Martinko, were you still with this same group of individuals that you'd come to the mall with?
Yes, sir.
So you were still with Tracy Price and Marty Miller and Stu, and what's Stu's last name?
Stu Gibson.
Okay. Was Michelle Martinko with anybody?
Not that I recall. As I remember, I think she'd just been on the telephone and when we met with her.
Okay. Do you
Mr.
recall?
Harris, I'm so sorry
Yeah.
for interrupting, but we've just had some really loud noise from next door, and I'm going to see if I can put a stop to that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Harris. Go ahead.
Not a problem, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Bergen, I believe I just asked you, was Michelle Martinko with anyone when you saw her?
Yeah, correct, not that I recall.
Okay. Do you recall what Michelle was wearing that night?
She was dressed up, we were all dressed up because we had been to the banquet and it was more formal. Not precisely.
Okay. But she was in nice clothes that evening?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you speak with Michelle that night?
We did. We stopped and spoke with her I think right after she was on the telephone.
Okay. Do you recall what you talked with her about?
Small talk to begin with. Why was she at the mall? And she was there to pick up a coat. She told us that her mother, I believe, had put on layaway, and we were going to the movie, so we invited her to the movie, and she said no, she had to get this coat. She had a large wad of cash that she was going to use to pick up the coat, so she told us she couldn't join us.
How long did this conversation last?
Just a few minutes, just 2 or 3 minutes, I suppose.
Okay, and do you recall how the conversation ended?
That she was on the phone, couldn't reach her mother. I believe she was still trying to reach her mother, so she was going to be on the phone again, and so we left and just kept walking around the mall.
Okay. Now, in your time talking with Michelle, did anything seem out of the ordinary?
No, well, other than the large amount of money that she was holding, that was surprising, but no, otherwise, nothing I can remember.
And that was just surprising to see a high school student with a considerable sum of money?
Yeah, exactly.
And she explained that she was going to use that for this coat that she was looking for a Christmas present?
Correct. Said that her mother had put it somewhere and she had to go pick it up.
Okay. But other than that, nothing seemed out of the ordinary with Michelle?
No.
Did she seem upset at all?
No.
Did she seem concerned for her safety?
No.
Was she scared at all as you talked to her?
Not at all.
So it was otherwise just a normal interaction between teenagers at a mall?
Correct, yep.
Now, after you parted ways with Michelle, did you see her again at Westdale Mall?
I think we may have seen her as we were walking around, but we didn't stop and talk or anything. I think it was just seeing her.
So no more conversations with her that night?
No, sir.
And do you recall what time you left the mall?
I don't know exactly, but it was probably just prior to 9 o'clock.
Because you had to get to your movie?
Correct, but it was very close.
Okay. Mr. Bergen, I have no further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Spees.
Thank you. Just a few questions. Good afternoon, Mr. Bergen.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Bergen, in the time that you saw Ms. Martinko at the Westdale Mall, and this, as you described for the men and women of the jury, this would be in the lower level of the mall?
That's correct. Mhm.
And the mall consisted of mainly 2 levels?
A total of 2 levels, yes. Mhm.
And there were anchor stores at either end of the mall. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And I think, as portrayed in the government's exhibit, there's a Yonkers at one end, Penny's at another end.
Correct.
There were eating establishments interspersed within the mall itself? Yes?
Yes. Mhm.
And while you and your companions were there at the mall, did you stop and have anything to eat?
No.
Just walked around, killed some time, and then got ready to depart for the movie?
Correct.
In the time that you saw Ms. Martinko in the mall, did you notice anything in her hands other than this wad of money that she showed to you?
No, and if I may, the wad of money was in her pocket.
I
and
see.
She pulled it out and put it back in her pocket, yeah.
Okay. Other than that, did you see anything else in her hands?
No.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you.
Okay.
Further examination, Mr. Harris.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You may step down.
Thank you.
State may call its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Merlin Winkler.
Good afternoon. Before you take your seat, please pause and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead and be seated. When we're in the courtroom, Mr. Winckler, we have to be especially careful not to interrupt the person if you're being asked questions, as you will be, to make sure that those questions are completed, and then pause, take a deep breath, and then begin your answer. I want to make sure that there's some space between the two speakers so that we have a clear record. All right? We tend to walk all over one another when we're in conversation, and we can't do that in here. All right?
All right.
Okay. Please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names for the record.
First name is Merlin, M-E-R-L-I-N. Last name is Winkler, W-I-N-C-K-L-E-R.
Thank you. You may examine the witness, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Winkler, where do you live?
I'm currently residing at 741 Colonial Drive, Collinsville, Virginia. I've been there a little over 27 years.
And what do you do?
Currently, I'm unemployed, but I have done various jobs, everything from construction to bartending to a guide fishing and hunting service.
Okay. Sounds like you've kept busy over the years.
I've tried to stay occupied.
Mr. Winkler, I want to take you back in time a little ways to the year 1979. Is it okay if I ask you some questions about that time
Yes, sir.
period? In 1979, did you live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa?
Yes, I did.
And how old were you in 1979?
In '79, I'd have been approaching 20 years old. I graduated from high school in 1977.
And where did you go to high school?
Tyndall Tabor High School, and that's in Tyndall, Tyndall, South Dakota.
So you're not a native of Cedar Rapids, are you?
No, sir.
Okay. When was it that you moved to Cedar Rapids?
I moved there in '79. I want to say it was in May of
And
'79.
what was it that brought you to Cedar Rapids?
A friend of mine, a high school friend, best friend, actually he was my best man at my wedding, he had moved to Cedar Rapids. He was a meat cutter and a meat manager, and he had moved there to take over managing the meat department at a new Barlow's food store. And I was in South Dakota in a factory job, wasn't happy, and he called me and said, there's a lot of work in Cedar Rapids. If you want to come here, I already got an apartment, you can move in with me, and so that's what I did.
So you moved there in May of '79?
Yes, sir.
And how long did you stay in Cedar Rapids?
Not long, sir, approximately 7 months.
So what month would it, or I guess what month and year would it have been when you moved from Cedar Rapids?
It would have been in December of '79. I actually stayed in Cedar Rapids over Christmas, but after Christmas, I moved back to South Dakota to enter college.
Now, when you lived in Cedar Rapids, where did you live?
I lived in a little apartment, and it's been 40 years, so if you could look at my previous testimony, you could probably tell me the address, and I could affirm what it is. But
Well, how about this? Who did you live with at the time?
I lived with my friend Larry Zennick.
Okay, and this was the friend who had told you about all the work in Cedar Rapids?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Winkler, while you lived in Cedar Rapids, did you know Michelle Martinko?
I didn't know her. I met her through a friend of mine, Andy Seidel.
Okay, so the name Michelle Martinko is familiar to you.
The name is familiar,
And-
and I had met her twice.
Okay, so you wouldn't say you were friends with Michelle, you knew her through somebody else.
Correct.
And I believe you said you knew her through your friend Andy Seidel.
Correct.
How is it that you knew Andy Seidel?
Andy worked at Barlow's grocery store with my friend Larry Zennick, and they were good friends, and so being as I moved in with Larry, I eventually met Andy, and we became good friends.
So in '79, when you were in Cedar Rapids, you were hanging out with Andy on a regular basis?
Yes, because he eventually quit working at the Barlow's grocery store, and he took a job at the same place I did, D&B Enterprises, selling vacuum cleaners door to door.
How does that work?
It didn't work well.
I believe you may have already said this, Mr. Winkler, but how many times did you see or meet Michelle Martinko?
I met her twice in the whole time I was in Cedar Rapids.
Was one of those times December 19th of 1979?
Yes, sir.
And I'll just ask you generally at first, what were you doing kind of in the evening of December 19th, 1979?
Andy wanted to get a Christmas present for Michelle, and he had asked me if I wanted to go to the mall, helping him pick out a gift for Michelle. He already knew the gift he wanted to get her, a fiber optic light. And so I went to the mall with him because I'd never been there. I was new to town, I didn't have any money, so shopping wasn't a big thing on my agenda at that time.
Was this Westdale Mall that you were going to go to that evening?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what time in the evening that you would have gone to Westdale Mall?
Andy picked me up at my house about roughly 6:30 in the evening. We had both run some calls that afternoon, and he asked me if I would go to the mall and help him pick out a gift for Michelle. And we left my apartment approximately at 6:30. Andy came over and picked me up with his vehicle to go to the mall.
Now, once you were at Westdale Mall, did you happen to run into Michelle Martinko?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And did you expect to see her there that evening?
No, we didn't.
Okay. And is that because Andy was there to buy a present for her?
Correct.
So he obviously didn't want her there if he was purchasing a gift for her.
Correct.
Where in the Westdale Mall did you see Michelle Martinko?
It would have been the main level of the mall, approximately in the middle of the mall. There were like a food court there, and we stopped there to get a soda, and we were drinking that soda, and all of a sudden Andy saw Michelle coming up down, and he said, "Hey, there's Michelle. Let me introduce you to her again," because the only other time I'd met her was he brought her over to our apartment one time, and they stayed 10 to 15 minutes. So I really, I didn't know her, and so he was going to reintroduce me to her. He was really fond of her, and
Okay. Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. Winckler, I'm going to have you step down off the witness stand. And I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1A. If you want to take a second and familiarize yourself with it. Now, as you look at State's Exhibit 1A, does this appear to be an overhead picture of Westdale Mall?
I'm assuming that's what it is, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, as you look at it, does it appear to be Westdale Mall?
It's 40 years, I'm sure it is.
Okay. If you were to look at some of the stores that are listed on there, there's a J.C. Penney, there's some other stores. Were those stores that were at Westdale Mall in 1979?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Winckler, as you look at Exhibit 1A, could you show us where it was that you came across Michelle Martinko?
I would say it was in this general area of the mall, right in here, in the main court.
Okay. And Mr. Winckler, is it fair to say you're pointing to a spot where kind of the main walkways intersect?
Correct.
Okay. And did you how did you describe that area when you testified earlier?
It was the main part of the mall where people walk, and there was a food court there, and we met her in the main part of the mall. We got up from our seats from the food court and walked out to the main part of the mall to meet her.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You can retake the stand. Mr. Winckler, do you recall if Ms. Martinko was with anyone when you saw her?
Yes, she was.
Okay. Did you know any of the people she was with?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Generally speaking, can you describe them?
There were 3 guys, and for some reason I thought there was another girl with them, but they were all dressed up like they had been at an event or some kind of function, and they were all together.
Did they appear to be the same age?
Yes.
Do you recall what Michelle was wearing?
Yes, she was wearing a black dress.
Okay. Did she have any type of jacket on?
I don't remember.
Okay, but you do recall her wearing a black dress that evening?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you and Andy went up to talk to Michelle, do you recall what you talked about?
Oh, just small talk in general. Andy mentioned that we were there at the mall shopping for a gift for her, a Christmas gift. And he made the comment about that he brought me along as a lookout to make sure if by some accident we ran into her at the mall, that I could watch and make sure where she was at so she wouldn't see what store he went in to buy her a gift.
And how long did this conversation last?
I would say maybe 5 minutes.
And where did you go after you were finished talking with Michelle?
We went to a gift shop on the second level of the mall to buy a gift for her.
Okay, and do you recall what that gift shop was called?
Not right offhand. It's in my testimony. It was a small gift shop, sold black lights, odds and end gifts, things of that nature.
If I told you it could be Spencer's Gifts, does that ring a bell?
That does ring a bell. Yes, sir.
Now, after you had left Michelle to go to Spencer's Gift, did you see her again that night?
No, sir.
Okay, did you see her anywhere else in the mall?
No, sir.
Okay. When you were speaking with her for that brief period of time, did anything seem out of the ordinary with Michelle?
No, the people she was with, they looked like they were having a good time. The conversation was friendly, just average young people small talk.
And once you were, or maybe once Andy was done shopping, did the two of you leave the mall?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, sir.
Questions for the witness, Mr.
Thank you
Spees?
briefly. Good afternoon, Mr. Winckler.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Winckler, when you and Mr. Seidel went to the Westdale Mall, Mr. Seidel wasn't expecting to see Michelle there, was he?
You're correct. He was not expecting to see her.
I mean, the whole purpose, as you've explained for us, is that he went there to buy her a Christmas present, and I guess to make it a surprise, didn't want to run into her there.
Correct.
So when Mr. Seidel saw Michelle Martinko at the mall with these three men and maybe another young woman, was he upset by seeing her out there?
No, he wasn't.
Did he say anything to you later on about being upset that she was there and he wasn't expecting her to be there?
No.
All right, thank you. Those are all the questions I have for you.
Redirect, Mr. Harris.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Winkler. You may step down. State may call its next witness.
State calls Charles Andrew Seidel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Seidel. You're headed over to the witness chair, the red one. Please mind the step. And before you sit down, please pause and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Go ahead and be seated. Just a couple of things before we start with your testimony. It's important in the courtroom that only one voice speak at a time, so I'd ask you to pay close attention to allow the attorneys to finish their questions before you begin your answer. All right? Please tell us your full name and spell your first and last names for the record.
My name is Charles Andrew Seidel, Charles, C-H-A-R-L-E-S. Last name Seidel, S-E-I-D-E-L.
Thank you. You may examine the witness, Mr. Maybanks.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Seidel. And can you tell us how old you are?
I just turned 60 last month.
Where do you currently live?
I'm sorry?
Where do you currently live?
I live just south of Washington, D.C. in a little town called Leonardtown on the Maryland side.
Okay, what's your current occupation?
I'm a DOD contractor in support of Marine Corps Aviation.
How long have you held that position?
About 10 years.
Just want to ask a little bit about your background then. Can you tell us what you did before that? Just kind of lead us back a little bit.
Sure. So the 30 years before that was I served on active duty with the U.S. Navy. So I'm retired active duty Navy.
And what locations were you assigned to during that 30 years with the Navy?
There was a lot. Mostly Florida and various locations in California. I did do an overseas tour for about 3.5 years in Sicily.
When did you join the Navy?
May of 1980.
And where did you go to boot camp?
Orlando, Florida.
Right. So after boot camp, then you had those various assignments up until you retired?
I did.
And been a DOD contractor for the last 10 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Mr. Seidel, I'm going to take you back in time a little bit here, okay? I want to ask you about December of 1979. Where were you living at that time?
I was actually attending school and living at home with my folks in Marion.
And where is Marion? Whereabouts?
It's a suburb, I guess you would call it, of Cedar Rapids, so they share a joint border together.
So it's in Linn County as well?
It is in Linn County, yes.
Okay. I don't know if they'd like being called a suburb of Cedar Rapids. But you said you were a student. Where'd you go to school?
This was at Coe College, small school in Cedar Rapids.
How long had you been there as of December of '79, if you can give us a guesstimate?
Oh, that was my first year, so I guess September-ish when I started, so just a few months in.
So were you just getting involved in the general studies of college at that time?
Initially, yes, so it was all just kind of a basic liberal arts. Wasn't really sure where I was going to go at that point.
Okay. Were you working, too?
I was working in the produce department at a supermarket called Barlow Foods.
And where was Barlow's located?
It actually was on the line between Marion and Cedar Rapids. I think it was properly on the Marion side of the line.
Did you do any other odd jobs at that time or have any other occupation?
Not that I recall.
Where did you attend high school?
Linn-Mar.
And since we are in a different county than Linn County, can you tell us where Linn-Mar is generally?
I think it actually sits outside of the city limits of Marion, as I remember. But it more or less encompassed the rural areas surrounding Marion, not including the Cedar Rapids area.
Okay. Approximately how old were you in December of 1979?
I would have been 19.
And so in December of 1979, you told us you were living at home with your folks, working at Barlow's, and going to Coe College. Anything else going on in your life then?
I think that was about it. That was a lot.
Seems like it. Did you know an individual by the name of Michelle Martinko at that time?
I did.
How did you know Michelle?
I mean, we met a couple of years before, and we dated, and then I guess we're just close friends.
As of December of '79, you mean?
Yes.
All right. Was there a point when you were boyfriend and girlfriend with Michelle?
I would say, yeah, in the traditional sense, we were kind of boyfriend, girlfriend at one point. And then I think as we grew older, we kind of understood that our paths were not going in the same direction, but it didn't mean that we couldn't still remain good friends.
As of December of 1979, how long would you say that you had known Michelle?
Oh, probably 3 years.
I'm going to test your memory here now. Do you remember how you met her?
I do, because it's something I do very badly, and that's roller skate.
Okay.
So we actually met, there was a roller rink, I don't know if it's still there or not, but just right on the kind of the Marion Cedar Rapids line.
Super skate?
I think that was exactly the place.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed since then. Tell us about that experience, what you recall.
Well, I went there with a couple of my guy friends, and I was struggling very hard trying to stand on these 8 wheels and just was being very unsuccessful at doing so. And then this young girl came up and asked if she could help me overcome my obstacle of these 8 wheels and kind of get me going. So, and that's kind of how we met.
So she felt sorry for you?
I think that's exactly what it was.
Okay. How long after that first meeting did you guys, you think, start dating or just become an item, if you can recall?
I mean, initially, it was kind of just meeting at the roller skating rink and refining my skills and talking, and then when we both realized we had a passion for pizza, I think is when the dating actually started, when we discovered that we both like Shakey's a lot.
Great. And so did things just kind of evolve from there?
They did.
Tell us, if you would, about Michelle. Start with, what do you remember about her personality?
Oh, she was very outgoing. She was the kind of person that would never afraid to talk to a stranger. She was always willing to help anyone that needed help. I mean, it's hard to characterize someone as good and as pure as she was in terms of how she would treat others.
Did she have a sense of humor?
She did.
Okay. Did you guys joke around a lot with each other?
Oh, we joked around all the time.
And it sounds, based on what you've already said, but was she pretty fun to be around?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't know of anybody that ever met her didn't enjoy the time they spent with her.
She intelligent?
Very.
Religious, if you remember?
She was, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things she liked to do, was read me passages from the Bible, and we'd talk about what it really meant in today's terms. And she enjoyed poetry. So those were a couple of things that we continue to share up until the end.
It's pretty deep for 18 and 19-year-olds.
It is. But it was, I don't know that that was something she shared openly with others, but something that kind of we had.
What do you remember about her physical appearance?
I mean, she was physically fit. I mean, healthy. I guess I don't really understand how to answer that question completely. I mean, she was in good health, physically fit.
Yeah, I guess I meant kind of more like, what did she like to wear? What,
Oh,
you know,
okay,
those type of
okay,
things.
all right. That's a different question in my mind.
It is.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, she had a very keen fashion sense for trends that were going on at the time. She spent lots of time with hair and makeup and having a very nice fashion sense, was always dressed very nice. And she liked shiny stuff. I mean, she liked jewelry and things that sparkled. But she never dressed inappropriately, right? I mean, so everything was very, I guess, timely is the word I want to say.
Mr. Seidel, I want to show you a photograph that's already been previously accepted into evidence. It states Exhibit 2F, which will shortly be appearing above you. Mr. Seidel, do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
We were at I don't remember where it was at. Can I have a second?
Sure.
I don't remember if it was dance at her school or mine. I think it had something to do with a school thing. I know proms are typically done in the spring, so it probably wasn't that. I really don't remember where the photograph was taken.
Did you guys go to some school dances together while you were boyfriend and girlfriend?
We did.
Do you think this picture was taken while the two of you were then actively dating and in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship?
I would say so, yes.
Mr. Seidel, I want to take you up to the night of December 19th, 1979, but I'd like you to give us an idea, and I know this is reaching back a ways, but to the best of your recollection, about what was the status of your relationship with Michelle by that point in time?
I would say I would just categorize it as close friends. We both knew that we had reached that crossroads in our lives where one of us was going to go one way and the other one was going to go the other way. And I think out of mutual respect and care for each other, we didn't want to compromise the other's path. But yet, there was no reason for us to part ways in a bad way, right? We could still remain good friends. We did share common interests, and that's just kind of the way it went. We just kind of grew apart as we evolved, growing into adulthood.
So would you say then you weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, but you were still close?
I would say that is true. We still went to Shakey's Pizza on occasion.
Okay, all right. Do you remember the night of December 19th, 1979?
I do.
What were you doing that night?
Well, I had an opportunity to go to the mall and hopefully get in and out and purchase her Christmas gift without her seeing me or knowing what I got.
What mall are you talking about?
It was the Westdale Mall in Cedar Rapids.
It's our understanding that it was new at that point in time, that
I
mall.
believe it's like its first year.
So you decided to go to Westdale Mall to get her a gift.
Yes.
Did you know what she was doing that night?
It had something to do with some kind of awards banquet or some kind of choir thing that she had going on. So therefore, that presented me with the opportunity to get in and out of the mall unseen by her.
So did you expect to run into her at the mall?
I did not expect to run into her at the mall.
Did you know what kind of gift you were going to get her?
I did. She wanted, I guess back in the late 70s, these lights that had the fiber optic things on the end that changed color. That's what she wanted.
I mean, that's not like a lava lamp or something, right?
No. It was kind of new stuff that was out.
All right.
Because she was kind of a trendy person, and that was kind of a trendy thing to have, was this light.
Okay, so you had in mind the light.
Yeah.
Did you know where you were going to get it?
The only place that I knew I could get it was at the mall at a place called Spencer Gifts. They carried a lot of novelty items like that.
It's a good way to describe Spencer Gifts. Okay, who'd you go to the mall with? Anybody?
Murray Winkler.
And how did you know Murray?
I knew him jointly through a friend I worked with at Barlow's.
How long had you known Murray, if you recall?
It wasn't that long, a few months.
And so whose idea was it for you guys to go together? Did you call him up? Were you just hanging out? Do you
No,
remember?
I called him up. I mean, we talked before, and he mentioned that he still had a couple of things to pick up for the holidays. So I said, hey, I'm going to the mall. You want to ride along?
So you and Murray went to the mall with the idea of going to Spencer Gifts to pick up this fiber optic light. Is that right?
Yes.
When you got to the mall, do you have any guesstimation at all as to approximately what time you got there?
I would say anywhere between maybe 7:15 at the latest. So right around the 7:00 p.m. timeline.
Now, when you got to the mall, did you have an opportunity to run into Michelle?
I did.
Can you tell us about the circumstances under which you saw her or ran into her?
Well, I mean, Murray and I, as I remember, entered to like, there's like an upper level and a lower level. And we kind of entered in and just, I mean, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. I mean, she was fairly easily recognizable with the blonde hair, and she had on a white rabbit coat that I recognized. So, I mean, it was immediately apparent, to me that she was down there. And I'm like, holy cow.
And so was that on the lower level then?
That was on the lower level.
All right. I'm going to get out an exhibit here really quick, Your Honor. Can I approach the exhibit and
You
try to
may.
get it set up? Mr. Harris does this alone pretty well. Okay, Mr. Seidel, if you don't mind coming down here for us, I'm going to put you to the test now. So hi. Mr. Seidel, so this is a photograph that's been previously accepted into evidence as State's Exhibit 1A. It's been described as the Westdale Mall, approximately how it appeared in 1979. So if you would, to the best of your ability, now looking at this, is the lower level of Westdale Mall. Tell us where you think that you first saw Michelle.
This is the lower level.
Yes.
It was a large open area, I remember that.
Up here is J.C. Penney's on the top, and then to the left and across there is Von Mauer. The right is Montgomery Ward's.
I would have to say it's probably right in the center section, as I remember, because there was some plants and a bunch of other stuff down there too. Some tables and places to sit.
Okay, sure, you bet. And so, is this also have some restaurants and whatnot down there?
It did, there was some places to eat down there, the orange juice place, and a couple of those other mall menus were down in that area.
Were you eating when you saw Michelle, or were you
No,
just?
I was walking in with Murray.
Okay,
There was no eating, this was a mission, to get the lamp and get out.
okay, all right, and you got caught right away. Okay, so, you saw Michelle, where did you end up talking to her?
I did.
Okay, can you tell us where you and Murray then ended up talking to her?
It was right in the same place.
Okay, great.
So we came to her.
For the record, down here, you pointed to the area surrounded by Endicott shoes, but it has the great hot dog experience, Morrow's Nut House, things like that. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, that area, yeah.
Okay. Well, perfect. Now we're in the mindset, so you can go ahead and have a seat there, Mr. Seidel, and ask you some more questions. Well, so tell us why you decided to approach her instead of trying to go get the fiber optic and leave, I guess.
I was spotted.
Okay, all right. Well, what happened when you saw her then? Did you just go make contact or
Well,
what?
Murray and I went down, I don't know if you remember if we went down on the stairs. I think there was an escalator there. I don't remember which route we took, but just went down to her and said, hey, wasn't expecting to see you here. I'm gonna go back up and go get your gift. Please don't follow me.
Okay, all right. Did she seem agreeable to that?
She seemed agreeable to that.
All right. When you saw her, do you recall if she was talking to anybody or with somebody?
As I remember, I think there might have been a couple of people down there that she might have been talking with. And they were kind of dressed up too, so they may have been people from the choir thing. They were younger people. But by the time Murray and I actually arrived where she was at, they were gone.
I see. So did you see her talking with them? By the time you showed up to talk to her, they had parted ways, basically?
Yeah.
Based upon your conversation with her, did she make any indication to you as to her then existing state of mind to meet you later or talk to you later? Or I guess give an indication of what she was going to do that night?
Not really. I mean, she mentioned to me that would it be okay if she gave me a phone call? right? And I said, sure, why not? But there was nothing that triggered any alarm bells in my mind in terms of her behavior or state of mind at the time.
Okay, and I think you anticipated my next question here. What do you remember about her demeanor that night?
I mean, she was just kind of happy, glad to be at the mall because she loved the mall.
Okay. How did she look? What was she wearing or whatnot?
I mean, the only thing I can definitively remember is the rabbit coat, right? I mean, the rest of it is gone from my memory. I can't remember anything else.
So you said that she didn't seem like she was bothered or otherwise anxious about anything?
No.
How long did you talk to her, you think?
I would say less than 2 minutes. It was very brief.
And after you parted ways with Michelle, then now if I remember Westdale Mall, you have to go up the stairs to get to Spencer, right?
That's correct. I had to go back upstairs.
So you went up the stairs. Did you look back, see what Michelle did, or
Nope.
did you indeed purchase this fiber optic light?
I think I did, yes.
Okay, all right. After that, what'd you do?
Went home.
Did you and Murray do anything, or that you can recall, or?
Yeah, I want to say, okay, because, I mean, I was a college guy, Murray was a single guy, and I want to say there was a place that had some exotic dancers or something, and Murray wanted to swing through there and see what that was all about. And I think that was a very disappointing thing for us, and we left.
Okay.
And then I'm pretty sure we either went straight to his house or there was a little neighborhood tavern right close to his house. We might have stopped and had a beer because we both like to throw darts as well. So we might have popped in there real quick, and then I took him home, and then I went home.
All right, so you went back to your folks' place in Marion after that, then?
Yep.
All right. Sounds not like it was an atypical night for a couple guys that are 20 years old. So it wasn't an atypical night for a couple 20-year-old guys?
I would say no.
Andy, so after you went home for the night, did you have any contact with Michelle's parents later that night that you recall?
Yeah, at some point in the evening, Michelle's mom called my parents' home and wanted to know if I had heard anything from her. And that's why I said, no, I hadn't heard anything. And this had now kind of exceeded that threshold timeline of when she said she was going to call, but, I mean, she isn't going to call, she isn't going to call. I had no concern at that point until her mom called me.
Okay, that was going to be my question. So, because she said she might call you, but she didn't, and you weren't particularly concerned about that, at least at the time?
Yeah, no.
Okay. So her mom called your house, and, I mean, you weren't able to report where she was?
Right.
Right, okay. So what happened next then? What did you do, if anything, at that point?
I don't think we really did anything at that point.
What happened later that night, if anything?
There was another phone call, as I remember.
Okay.
And now I could tell her mom was very upset and very worried that something wasn't right.
Was she still looking for Michelle?
Yes.
And were you able to report any more updates on her?
No, I still hadn't had any contact with her. She hadn't tried to contact me.
So at that point in time, Andy, what did you do, if anything?
Well, I asked her if she wanted me to maybe get in the car and drive around and see if I could maybe possibly locate her. And she was agreeable to that, and this was getting pretty late. I mean, this was probably close to midnight maybe, right? It was pretty late. And I knew that some of the young kids went to a local bar called Gatsby's. So I said, well, maybe I'll get in the car and go. And my mom was up, and she was now kind of concerned about it. She goes, well, let me ride along, and I can be a second set of eyes to help spot the car, because she knew the car as well.
Okay.
So I said, sure, come on along.
So where was Gatsby's then in relation to, I guess, Marion, the east side of town, those type of
Okay,
things?
so it was, I want to say it was on the west side of town. Marion is kind of situated east of the Cedar Rapids line. And then the mall was clear on the far west end of town. And then Gatsby's, kind of the dividing line in Cedar Rapids is the Cedar River, right? So you got the east side, east of the river, west side, west of the river. So this Gatsby's place was not too far from the river. So it might have been about halfway between the river and the mall. I'm guessing maybe from my mom's house, maybe 7 miles, 8 miles maybe.
Okay,
I mean, it wasn't that far.
all right. So did you drive by that location?
We
or-
did.
All right. And what were you looking for?
I was looking for the Buick.
And we've seen some pictures of that. And did you see the Buick?
No.
All right. Did you look anywhere else?
The only thing I could possibly think of was just to kind of keep an eyes open on First Avenue, which is kind of the main boulevard in Cedar Rapids, just to see if I could see anything on the way back. I couldn't think of any place else that I would have thought to look.
We're going to show you a photograph here really quick, Mr. Seidel. I think this has been received as State's Exhibit 4D or C, 4C. Mr. Seidel, do you recognize this?
Yes, that's the car.
Okay. Was that the car that Michelle was known to drive back then?
It was.
Were you looking for this car on First Avenue as well?
I was.
Did you ever see it?
Did not ever see it.
How long do you think you looked for Michelle's car?
It wasn't very long. It might have been an hour, maybe. I mean, because at that hour of the night, almost every business that I could think of that she would possibly go to, they were closed. So where my head was at is that she had to be driving somewhere.
So were you able to find the car at all that night?
No,
Did you end up going back home?
went back home.
And at some point in time, after you went back home, did you go to sleep for the night or stay up?
No, I went to sleep for the night.
And the next day, did you find out what had happened to Michelle?
Yes, I was contacted by the Cedar Rapids Police.
Mr. Seidel, do you know, or did you know of any person in December of 1979 with whom Michelle was having some kind of conflict or from whom she feared violence?
No, no one.
Your Honor, that's all I have for now.
We are going to break. We're going to break for about 15 minutes. And I remind ladies and gentlemen of the jury of the admonition, don't make up your mind, don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. We will stand in recess for 15 minutes.
Please rise for the jury. You can leave your notebooks on your